Ever since I can remember, I've always wanted to do what I love for a living. And that's what everyone wants, right? Work less, earn more, and enjoy life. But the system is screaming at you to do the complete opposite. Go to school, do university, get a job, and work for 60 years until retirement when you get to do all of those things. And that's kind of how I started off too. I worked hard at school, went to medical school, and worked as a surgeon, and was kind of on this treadmill to getting everything I'd wanted when I applied to med school. But at the same time, my mind was also curious. I taught myself how to code, I set up some online businesses to pay off my student loan, and I learned an insane amount along the way. And this is arguably the key to life, right? It's pursuing your own goals and educating yourself to the point of consistently progressing in those goals and learning by doing. For me, learning how to learn anything is the single most important skill that can completely change your life from where you are now to where you want to be in the future. So hit that subscribe button and let me explain exactly how you can do just that. Now, in order to learn anything, you're going to start from a position of complete unconscious incompetence. You don't know how to learn, you don't know what you're going to learn, and you don't know why you're going to learn it. And so the first thing to do is to get curious. When I was building an online business, I did this out of necessity to actually get a house deposit and to pay off my student loan when I was in medical school. I didn't have a clue about sales, about marketing, or even about how to build a website. But I knew that I wanted to change my life and go from being a poor student with no external income to someone who could actually pay things off and get a house deposit early. Now, Richard Feynman was one of the world's greatest teachers, and he said, "I have to understand the world you see." And I believe that people inherently have a high level of curiosity around pretty much anything. For example, why do people jump in and read the news? Why do you go to YouTube? Why do you want to learn and understand things? Well, it's because of that innate curiosity. Now, in his book Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, author Shunryu Suzuki is a huge proponent for asking basic questions around pretty much anything. If you have a beginner's mind or a childlike mind, you're always thinking, why is this happening? How can I learn from this? What's the underlying cause of what's happening here? And whatever it is you're learning, if you adopt this beginner's mindset, you're never thinking, I know everything. You're always diving in and examining the evidence and thinking about how you can learn more efficiently and get to that level of mastery where you can completely transform your life. The difficulty with curiosity is that it can be quite scattergun, and you don't know where to start when you begin. And so one of the things that I would recommend here is to have a real deep think about what you want to do and where you want to go. If you want to transform your life right now by learning a new skill or developing pretty much anything, whether it's an online business, a new revenue stream, or learning how to code, you need to think why you want to do that. If it's deeply aligned to what you want to achieve in the future, you're more likely to then stick to that curious habit and learning whatever it is you want to learn. For me, what I'll often do is dive immediately into a Google search, which then provides me with some context, but also some examples of people who've done it before me so that I know it's not that hard, and if someone else has done it and it's physically possible, there's no reason why I can't do it either. So, for example, when I was starting my online business, I knew that I needed some kind of website in order to produce the product I wanted and in order to capture people's attention. Now, my first online business was actually an in-person events company, so I knew that I needed to promote the events that I was setting up. And so what I did was I literally went into Google and Googled something like how to build a website or how to market an event. What you'll see is lots and lots of contextual information, but I was specifically looking for examples of people who'd done it before me, where there was a practical guide that I myself could either replicate or take some key learning points from. The reason that practical examples are so useful is it gives you permission to do it yourself when you're first starting out. So get curious and start pulling on those threads when you find some of those examples. So I got curious and I started pulling on those threads when I saw some of those examples. Now, a really good example of this is if you use Notion quite a lot for note taking and you want to monetize your notes or create some Notion templates as a little bit of a side hustle and to actually learn how to learn business. So what you might do here is dive into Google, and let's say we Google how to create a Notion template. Now, there's lots of how-to guides here from Notion and from other people, but what I'm really looking for is examples of people who've been successful in that space and have monetized things and also have similar demographics to myself. So for example, if we look down the list here, we're seeing someone called Easlow pop up, we're seeing Thomas Frank pop up, and I'm not so interested in the actual practicalities of creating a Notion template because I'm I'm sure I can figure that out at a later date. What I'm curious about is why these people have been successful and why they're getting a lot of attention on Google or in YouTube. And so I'll start researching this a little bit more. So now I might change up my Google search, I might go to their YouTube channels, their social media, and just really look at what they're doing. And we can see here that Easlo has a really nice practical guide that he's actually sharing with the world. So I can see that he, a little bit like anyone creating a Notion template, is a student. He's wanted to create this and share it with the world, but then he's shared everything in public and he's shared his journey. And what we can see is he's gone into forums, he's become a popular member of things like the Notion community, and then he's built some of these Notion templates around things that people want. And he's also kept a nice, simple interface. And so people actively want to utilize these templates. We can then see he's gone into socials and start kind of going down this rabbit hole of really reverse engineering and understanding each of the steps that he's done in order to make his business a success from Notion templates. This gives me permission to do it, and it also gets me excited and curious that this is something that I can actively focus on right now. Now, the problem with getting curious is it opens a bit of a Pandora's box. You might see lots and lots of things and get curious about loads of stuff, and this means you start pulling on threads from all over the place, and this isn't a focused way to learn. What you need to be doing is focusing down on one thing that you can then work on every single day. For example, if I'm learning a language, what I don't do is try and learn 3 or 4 different languages at the same time. This means I might get mixed up between the languages, but it also means I won't accelerate my learning in one specific language as quickly as I want to. If I've spread my attention and my focus and my time across multiple different areas, I'm not going to be as optimized at learning that one thing. And it also means that I might get a little bit confused, a little bit distracted, and then end up not sticking with that habit of learning that language for as long as I should. And this is where you need to be a little bit self-reflective. When I started off a number of my businesses or when I was studying for exams, I knew that I needed to focus on one area and get really, really good at that fast before moving on to anything else. For example, for me, I knew that I wanted to share my revision notes online for my second business. I had a lot of other really interesting ideas that I wanted to start, but I stopped those from happening and I remained focused because I knew it would get me to where I wanted to go as quickly as possible. Then, things like learning sales, learning marketing, or learning deeper website development naturally came following that initial focus on how to set up that business, how to set up that website, and that then gradually evolved over time. I wasn't trying to grab books on sales and marketing and reading those all at once. I actually focused on one thing that I could practically apply my knowledge and learning to, and then everything else flowed on from this. And this is really where you want to get to. You want to get into that flow state where you start doing something, you get curious, you go back and learn more and get a little bit more adept and master that topic further before you move on to different areas of your growth and learning. Now, focus and curiosity are inherently linked. You see, as I mentioned in the examples that I gave earlier about my own curiosity, a lot of this came out of necessity. For example, when I was learning how to study, I knew that I had to do this because I didn't want to spend hours and hours in the library, and I wanted to spend time going to the gym or actually enjoying my life. Equally, when I set up my online businesses, this was again out of necessity, and it put leverage over myself to actually go out and do something and implement it because I wanted to transform my revenue, my life, and my ability to buy a property, and also pay off my student loan. The reason why leverage and necessity is so important when you're learning anything is it's more likely you're going to stick to it if you've got a real motivational reason behind why you're pursuing something and learning it. If you're just learning something for the sake of learning, as you might know from topics you find boring at school or unnecessary at college, you're not going to stick with them and you're not going to become proficient with them as quickly as you might. My top tip here is to really spend time thinking about what you want to do and where you want to go. This is where trying lots and lots of things when you start can be helpful, and then whittling down to that one thing to focus on. For example, if you know you want to educate people and that's your why, you love being a teacher and you want to share a lot of your knowledge, you might want to play around with how you're going to do that. Are you going to write a blog? Are you someone who's very good on video? If you don't like showing your face on video, can you start a podcast and do audio? Which of those things is your focus and is your why? If you don't know that you want to be an educator, you probably want to go back to the getting curious step of learning how to learn and really do some self-discovery and finding out what your why is and understanding what motivates you and what gets you up out of bed excited in the morning. Anyone can do anything with their time, but it's really what makes you happy and what also links to continuous learning, self-development, and self-improvement over a long period of time. Okay, so now that we've got curious and we've focused down on our one thing that we love doing, we really want to understand a little bit about what learning is. And this is where some people can get stuck. Learning in general is often thought to be a little bit boring and time-consuming, but actually it's the most important skill that can change your life. For me, learning isn't just about theory. It's actually about doing and then reflecting and then gradually improving over time. Learning is very much the growth mindset. It's about trying things, failing, and getting progressively better until you reach a level near mastery or to a level where you're proficient enough to get what you want and get that change in your life. And this, I think, was one of my biggest learning points. Whether it was studying for exams, building businesses, or learning languages, one thing that I did a little bit differently from other people was just be open to trying different things. For example, when I first discovered Active Recall, I didn't look at it and think, that looks a bit rubbish, I'm not going to try it. I thought, okay, the best way for me to test this out is to actually try it myself and see if it works for me. Things like spacing, taking notes, I also tried lots and lots of different methods and then picked the ones that worked best and then integrated it into how I learned. For doing things like starting a business, yep, I read lots of books at the beginning, but each of those books had some key points, and when I came across them, I thought, okay, I'm going to apply these right now. I'm going to see if they work, and I'm going to critically analyze them and then reflect on them and see if there's anything else that I can learn around them. And this is one of the reasons that I was able to quickly build a business. I didn't just stick at the theory side, watching YouTube videos or reading, I executed very, very quickly. And if you can reduce your time from theory or learning about something to actually executing on an idea, you're much more likely to achieve the goals that you want. People who stay in that phase of just theory about learning are never ever going to get to where they want to be. And unfortunately, that's about 99% of the population. So learning isn't just about sitting down and reading things, it's about experience, it's about understanding, it's about failure, and it's about getting better. And most importantly, learning is a journey. You will never stop learning. It's not a specific destination, it's everything you learn along the way. And if you commit to a long-term learning journey, whether it's anything from learning French to Spanish or building a business, then it will completely transform you as an individual and most importantly your life over a period of time. Okay, so in my opinion, building a system and a process is the most effective way to make any habit stick for as long as possible. If I'm learning anything, I always build a system first because it helps me to learn much more quickly. Now, what is a system or a process? Well, for me, it's often using something like Notion or Evernote or even Excel to build out a central knowledge database into which I can feed information, reflect back on it, and then put it into action when it's needed. So for example, if I'm learning business books or something like marketing, what I often do is I'll get my Kindle and I'll read through a set of marketing books, I'll highlight the key chapters, and then I'll save those to Notion so that I can come back to them at a later date. This system is organized by the date and the type of thing that I'm learning, and it means that I can quickly jump back and find reference materials when I need to apply them and put them into action. Now, a system isn't just about saving information to a knowledge database. It's actually about transforming that information into something that can be applied and then learnt from. So for example, sticking with marketing, if I read about a new marketing term in a book that I'm reading, I might highlight that and save it to Notion, but then I might build a template out of that piece of marketing information so that I can apply it to my actual business as quickly as possible. Let's say, for example, I'm reading a book on how to create an email list. The book might offer up a couple of quick tips that I can quickly save to Notion, and then what I'll do is I will build out those tips. So it might be something like having a strong headline, having the email formatted in a certain way, or using a certain piece of software. And so what I'll do is I'll create a template for that email in my knowledge system that I can then copy and paste at a later date, and that saves me a heck of a lot of time. The next step in building a system is then looking at the data. So again, sticking with that marketing example, if I've then copied and pasted that email and sent it, I might look at things like the open rate, I might look at things like how many people have shared that email, and then I'll reflect back and think, can this be improved? And I might also look at other marketing books and think, is this the best way to do it? And really critically analyze things with the data. And it's exactly the same thing for studying for exams. If I'm self-testing, I'm looking at how well I know certain areas, and I'm analyzing my scores in online question banks or at self-testing and thinking, do I know this well enough? And if I don't, I'm starting to question and again getting curious about why I don't know that. Is it that my learning style and my method isn't optimized? Is it because that topic is particularly difficult? And do I need to go back to the source material and really figure out what's going on or ask somebody else for help? And this way, the system allows me to learn as quickly as possible, and it allows me to store information so that I can actually apply it, because the best way to learn is actually from reflecting on things that you've done in practice. One of the best ways to learn anything is to actually share what you're learning with others and teach other people to then move through that learning cycle and become as proficient as possible. Austin Kleon, in his book Share Your Work, is a huge advocate of this. When you share things, you naturally begin to build up an audience, but you also start to learn from that audience and understand where other people might be struggling in their own journey. By sharing your knowledge online, you also become much more proficient at actually summarizing and talking about things in simple terms, which then leads to deeper understanding around the subject that you're learning. So again, whether it's a language, business, or studying for exams, I'd highly recommend using your system to actually share your information with others and teach others to move up to the top of Bloom's taxonomy rather than just learning something for the sake of learning. Now, my final tip is probably the most critical one, and that is to trust the learning cycle. Learning isn't a linear path. It's a journey with ups and downs, with failures and successes. And you need to appreciate that by executing and doing things, it's going to be the most effective and time-efficient way for you to learn. If you're actively involved in doing, whether that's practicing active recall questions when studying for an exam, or trying to build a business, those experiences are going to stick in your mind as they're personal, they're active, and they're testing yourself at every single stage. If you think about the average learning cycle, you start off by being introduced to new content. At this stage, you don't really understand it, maybe you don't really understand where it fits into your knowledge base, but then by jumping in and doing something, you start to learn a little bit. You're not going to learn every single thing on first pass, but then as you move around the learning cycle, you're going to start picking up more nuggets of information. So for me, this was when I was building a business. I didn't know anything about hiring, even though I'd raised lots and lots of venture capital funding. And so I needed to go back to the drawing board and focus down on this one area that I needed to learn. I went to books, I asked other people, I jumped onto online courses, but actually the most effective way to learn was to start hiring people and interviewing people, and also looking at how other companies hired effectively. I learned way more from interviewing more than 100 people than I did from reading any book. Now, once you've been through some of these experiences yourself, then it's time to share things. You can put things in a blog online, you can start a YouTube video or start a podcast, but by sharing, you start to distill and filter that thing that you've learned into language that's unique to you and into language that other people can understand. And this kind of forces you to learn much more effectively. And this is basically what the Feynman technique is. As you're sharing your knowledge, you're also inherently teaching other people, and you're moving around the circle of learning from being a learner to being a doer, to actually being a teacher and then giving back to that audience, which is really, really exciting. And if we go back to Bloom's taxonomy again, you'll remember that being a teacher and applying your knowledge and sharing that and creating new information is right at the top of the taxonomy pyramid. And this is where the final piece of the learning cycle comes in, which is when you can utilize your own experiences to create new information and new unique insights and become a little bit of a thought leader in whatever it is you're learning. So maybe you've learned a really effective new hiring technique through trial and error yourself by executing some of the principles you learned when you were hiring people. And this can then be shared with the wider community and really build up a knowledge base around new techniques and new thought spaces, which is really what a master teacher of any type of subject is going to be doing. Now, regardless of what it is you want to learn or how you want to transform your life over the next 6 months, year, 5 years, or 10 years, if you spend time actually learning the skill of how to learn, it will massively accelerate that journey. Often people get blocked because they get stuck in the learning process. They might want to build a website and then they realize that it might be a little bit difficult to them, and so they completely give up. Whereas if you understand how to learn, you know that learning is a little bit recursive and you're going to go through these peaks and troughs of learning. And then you know that you need to push through those hard times to learn the most. And if you know how to share your knowledge and how to learn more deeply, you're going to learn much more quickly and be open to learning as much as possible and give yourself the best chance of completely transforming your life. Now, I don't know how your life will transform, but if you do spend time learning how to learn, I guarantee it will change if you stick to these habits and tips consistently over the next 6 months to a year and really go deep and stay consistent. Now, I hope you found this video useful. I've actually got a really great video looking at how I learn hard topics and how you can make anything easy, which I'll pop up over here and I definitely recommend checking out. Thanks so much for watching. Do hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you again in the next one.